My parents let my golden child brother and his family move in for free while I pay rent, so I secretly move out and tell them to enjoy the freeloaders. All my life, I've wondered why my parents can't love me the way they love my brother, and now I think I no longer want to know the reason. My name is Mason, and I'm 22 years old. Like many young people my age, I dream of achieving success. I have a passion for software design and have been studying for a degree in the field. In addition, I work part-time as a software developer, and most of what I earn I save to start my own company. That's why I still live with my parents. Since the university is close to my parents' house, I save on transportation and other expenses, but I'm not living off them. Every month, I pay them $550 as my share of the rent and household expenses, so my life was going pretty well, and I thought that in a few more years I'd be close to achieving my dream. However, everything started to fall apart when my brother, who is 23, along with his entire family, decided to move in with us. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother, but he's also been a real problem ever since we were kids. Despite all that, he was always my parents' favorite. From a young age, he had a knack for getting into trouble. Whether it was breaking curfew, skipping classes, or getting into fights at school, Cam always found a way to cause chaos at every step. However, despite all this mess, my parents always had a soft spot for him. No matter how bad things got, they always forgave him quickly, while I was left wondering what I had to do to earn the same kind of unconditional support. He always found a way to avoid the consequences of his actions, and somehow everything ended up falling on me. Whether it was breaking something valuable or getting into trouble at school, I was always the one cleaning up after him. Cam got married when his girlfriend found out she was pregnant. Everything happened so fast. One minute he was talking about wild parties and nights out, and the next, he was moving in with her family and preparing to be a dad. My parents were there for him every step of the way, supporting him emotionally and financially. They even helped him and his wife set up their own place, hoping that a fresh start would lead him to take responsibility. A year ago, Cam and his family moved out, taking a generous sum from both our parents and his wife's family to start a business. And now, with their return, things have only gotten worse. Cam claims his business is thriving. He boasts about securing contracts with major construction companies, acting as if he's some kind of tycoon. He says he's just waiting for a $2 million payment to come through, exaggerating his success more with each telling. I found it hard to believe, given his history of irresponsibility, but my parents were quick to believe his story, listening with wide eyes as if he were giving a TED Talk. They sat there nodding in admiration as he recounted his supposed exploits. Meanwhile, I watched from the background, feeling like a ghost in my own house. When Cam announced he had sold his house to invest in a big contract, I almost choked on dinner. And of course, once the money comes in, he plans to buy a mansion in New York's wealthiest suburb, saying the whole family should move in with him. My parents are ecstatic, talking about how this is finally the big break they always knew Cam would achieve. They're over the moon, ready to follow him into this new chapter, oblivious to the potential pitfalls that might lie ahead. Meanwhile, I wonder if this supposed success is just another one of Cam's schemes, another chance to escape responsibility while dragging everyone else down with him. While Cam waits for his windfall, he and his family contribute nothing to the household. They don't pay rent, don't help with groceries, and have practically taken over the house. Their two kids, whom I love because they're innocent and not at fault for what the adults do, only add to the chaos. The house is always noisy, messy, and far from the peaceful environment I need to focus on my studies and work. In fact, I remember walking into the living room one day, dodging toys scattered across the floor and feeling like I was entering a war zone instead of my home. I used to cherish the quiet moments where I could sit and code, but now those moments feel like a distant memory. It's as if my sanctuary has been stripped away and replaced with chaos and disorder. The worst part is that Cam and his wife seem to think they can boss me around, asking me to run errands but never offering to pay for anything. I feel like a servant living in the house rather than a brother or even a son. They've taken over the kitchen, leaving their mess for me to clean, and their kids run around everywhere, interrupting my attempts to concentrate. It's frustrating and exhausting to have to deal with their constant demands while I'm striving to be a responsible person and stand on my own. It would have been bearable until last week when Mom came into my room. At first, she started talking about how household expenses had increased now that Cam and his family had moved in. From bills to food, everything is costing more. Deep down, I knew what she was going to say, but I didn't expect her to actually say it. She asked me to pay more on top of what I already pay. When I asked if she had asked the same of Cam and if he was going to start paying rent, she just got upset and left the room. The next day during breakfast, Dad told me the same thing while getting up from the table, not giving me a chance to protest. I looked at my brother, who looked back at me with embarrassment and then continued eating. The following night, after work, I went straight to talk to Mom. I told her I was barely earning enough and couldn't pay more than I already was. Since then, both Mom and Dad have stopped talking to me. They're giving me the silent treatment, as if I'm the freeloader or something. You know what hurts the most? Seeing how my parents treat Cam versus how they treat me. Cam gets away with everything, and yet they never hold him accountable for anything. Meanwhile, I'm paying rent, working hard in college, and saving for my future, but it seems like none of that matters. I hate to say it, but sometimes I feel like my efforts are invisible to them, as if no matter what I do, it's never enough in their eyes. I used to think that maybe I wasn't trying hard enough, that if I just achieved more, they'd finally see me. But now, after years of waiting for that approval, I realize it might never come. I've tried talking to my parents, but every conversation ends with them changing the subject or just ignoring me entirely. They're so wrapped up in Cam's big plans and his promises of a big house and a luxurious life that they don't see what's happening right in front of them. They don't see how much it hurts to be overlooked, how hard it is to work so much and still feel like you're not enough. The worst part is that even though Cam is older, he acts as if I owe him something. He doesn't lift a finger to help around the house, leaving me to take on additional responsibilities without any recognition. I've also thought about moving out, but that would cost even more, and right now, my financial situation doesn't allow for it. Update 1. Hi, it's Mason again. I wanted to update you on my situation since my last post received a lot of comments. Honestly, thank you for the support and suggestions. I really appreciate hearing your perspectives, even from those who didn't agree with me. Many suggested I should just move out, but truthfully, I'm not ready for that yet. I'm still finishing college and saving for my future, and the thought of paying rent and bills stresses me out because I wouldn't be able to cover everything. Now, not only has the house but also my room turned into a living zoo. I can't even begin to explain how intrusive my brother's family has been. For example, the other day I walked into my room to find my niece's bed set up in the corner. No warning, no asking for permission, just a bed placed in my space. I understand that kids need a place to sleep, but I didn't sign up to be a babysitter or have my room turned into their little makeshift playroom. When I confronted Cam about it, he just shrugged and said it was easier for everyone. Easier for whom? Certainly not me. And it gets even crazier. Yesterday, I found Cam's wife rummaging through my things. I walked in and caught her going through my desk drawer. What is wrong with her? I felt violated, like they were invading my personal space. When I asked her why she was doing that, she just smiled and said she was looking for a pen. A pen? Really? There's an entire house full of pens, including a desk downstairs, and she couldn't just ask me for one? It was outrageous, not to mention weird. I didn't want to explode over something that seemed trivial, but it felt like they were treating my space, my room, as if it were a common area. That night, I tried to relax after a long day of classes and work, hoping for some peace. But as soon as I sat down to study, the kids barged into my room, dragging their toys with them. I love them, but I need to focus on my studies. I had to explain that my room was off limits, but it was like talking to a wall. They didn't understand, and Cam didn't even step in. Instead, he just laughed as if it were no big deal. I was so frustrated that my brother didn't even set boundaries for his kids. The final straw came when I overheard Cam talking to our parents. I thought I could trust them, but I heard him saying that I needed to be more supportive of the family during these tough times. That's when I realized they'd been talking about my savings behind my back. I've been diligently saving for my future business, and hearing him say that made my blood boil. He had the audacity to suggest that I should give him my hard-earned savings because I don't know what Mason's saving so much for when he could be contributing that money to the family. What the hell? When I confronted him about it, he looked at me like I was the selfish one. He argued that, with the extra expenses of having them live here, it was my duty to help. I couldn't believe it. I've been working hard to save money for my future, and now he expects me to just hand it over because he made decisions that put him in need of help? It felt incredibly unfair. I refused to let him guilt me into giving up my dreams. In that moment, I realized I needed to set some serious boundaries. I'm not responsible for his decisions or his financial problems. I've spent years focusing on my own path, and I'm not going to let them derail my plans just because they think I owe them something. So, I took a deep breath and told Cam that I couldn't help financially, and that he needed to respect my space and privacy. I hope this leads to a better understanding, but it's hard to say if it'll change anything. For now, I'm standing firm in my decisions and prioritizing my goals, even if it means dealing with more drama from my family. Thank you again for the support. I'll be back if this ever resolves, and there's more to tell about my brother and the rest of the family. Update 2. I wish I had better news, but things have gotten worse, and if you thought it was complicated before, it's now reached a level I didn't think possible. After my last update, the emotional manipulation from my parents went from bad to absolutely unbearable. It was no longer just about paying a bit more here and there. Now they openly expected me to hand over my savings. Apparently, the money my brother was supposed to receive still hasn't come through, and every day they find new ways to corner me about helping the family. My mom kept repeating like a mantra, family helps family. Everything revolved around Cam always. The constant emotional blackmail was exhausting, and then the real bombshell dropped a few days ago. My parents got a call from my brother-in-law. I was in my room, trying to block out the usual noise of Cam's kids, when I heard raised voices. At first I couldn't make out much, but the conversation quickly escalated. My mom was pacing around the house and she sounded, well, devastated. I went downstairs to see what was happening, and that's when I learned the truth, the whole truth about my brother. It turns out Cam had lost everything long ago. That big payment he said was going to net him millions? It was a lie. In reality, he had invested all his money into some shady business months ago and had been completely scammed. The entire story about waiting for a payment was just that, a made-up story. But that's not all. He'd been living with his in-laws for months, taking advantage of them. When they finally had enough, they kicked him and his family out. That's when he showed up at our house, spinning more lies about his supposed success. I couldn't believe it. I mean, part of me always suspected that his big business venture was too good to be true, but I never thought he'd go this far. Cam had literally moved in with us because he had nowhere else to go, and instead of owning up to it, he kept lying, dragging everyone, including me, into his mess. I thought my parents would be furious when they found out. I expected some kind of confrontation, maybe even for them to finally see through all the excuses Cam had been making. But instead, they were devastated in a way I didn't anticipate. Instead of holding Cam accountable for his actions, they turned to me. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about how Cam had screwed everything up. It was about how I needed to step up and save the family. My dad sat me down after the call and made it clear, "Your brother is in trouble, Mason. This is the time you need to step up and help. You've been saving for years and it's your turn to give back to the family. You can always start your business later, but your brother, he needs that money now." Just like that. It's heartbreaking. I'm trapped in this impossible situation where no matter what I do, I'm the villain of the story. If I give them my savings, everything I've worked for will be gone, and I'll have to start from scratch. But if I refuse, my parents will see me as selfish, heartless, and ungrateful. And let's be real, even if I gave Cam the money, it wouldn't fix anything. He's proven time and again that he can't be trusted with finances. Deep down, I know giving him my savings won't help him get back on track. It would just be another temporary band-aid for a much deeper problem. So here I am, stuck between a rock and a hard place, wondering what the hell I'm supposed to do next. My parents won't stop pressuring me, and Cam keeps acting like he's done nothing wrong. Anyway, I don't think this will be my last update, not at all. Update 3. Today, I'm finally moving out of my parents' house. I don't care what happens next. Maybe this will be the last update, I'm not sure, but I needed to let it all out. As everyone knows, my brother and honestly my entire family have been horrible to me, and I've had enough. Mom and Dad not only forgave Cam and continued letting him stay at the house, but they also kept pestering me to pay more and give up my savings for my older brother, who supposedly has always looked out for me. What the hell do they mean by that? One thing I'm sure of is that they're never going to change or see reason. Cam says he's finally taking life seriously and is ready to take on responsibilities. According to him, he's come up with a new business idea with a friend and just needs a small investment, which he'll pay back as soon as the business takes off. The only thing that should take off is his lazy behind off the couch and into a job search. I don't understand how my parents always fall for this. He might be their golden child, but to me, he's nothing but a selfish man who doesn't care about anything but himself. So, unable to deal with this nonsense any longer, I decided to just leave and move out. And on top of that, I'm going to keep this a secret for now. I feel like if I tell my family right away, they'll do everything they can to stop me. I've been looking at some studios and rooms for rent, but none fit my budget. Honestly, I need something I can afford along with bills and food, and I still want to save whatever I can for my dream business. The good news finally came yesterday. A friend of a friend is an immigrant looking for cheap apartments to rent. I felt that if he agreed to be my roommate, we could afford a small studio and even split bills and food expenses. This morning, we finally met and discussed everything. The good news is he already found a place and just needed a roommate. The place is a bit far from the university, but it doesn't matter. I can walk without any problem. The emotional torment and manipulation I've endured in my own home will no longer be there. Tonight, I'm moving out in secret. I can't wait to see their faces when they find out I'm gone. I hope this works out well. Please wish me luck, everyone. Update 4. So, here's the promised update about what happened after I moved out in secret. Get ready, because if you're on my side, you're going to be pretty furious. To recap, after weeks of putting up with the craziness at home, I decided to move out in secret. It wasn't an impulsive decision, not at all. I'd been discreetly looking for a place for a while, making sure it was affordable, close enough to my job, and fit my university schedule. After considerable effort, I found the perfect place, thanks to a friend of a friend looking for a roommate. I didn't tell my family about this. I knew that if I even hinted at my plan, I'd be bombarded with emotional manipulation and dramatic scenes. So I set everything in motion quietly, ensuring my move would go unnoticed. I started packing little by little, hiding my stuff in my car trunk, waiting for the day I could leave without confrontation. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want the inevitable drama that would follow if I announced it. The day finally came. I had everything I needed. I signed the lease and headed to my new place. It wasn't big or luxurious, but it was mine, and that was all I needed. The first night in my own space felt like taking a deep breath after months of suffocation. The silence. Oh, it was beautiful. For the next few days, I went about my life as usual, going to work and university as if nothing had changed. I knew it wouldn't be long before they noticed I wasn't around, but I had no intention of revealing my move until absolutely necessary. Then the inevitable happened. My mom called me one night, complaining about some problems in the house and casually slipping in a reminder about the rent increase I was supposed to contribute. She asked where I was and why I hadn't been home in the last few days. I mean, she didn't seem to care that I wasn't around. She only cared that my money wasn't around. I could almost hear the expectation in her voice. The same old assumption that I would keep carrying that financial weight. And that's when I dropped the big news. I calmly told her, I don't live there anymore. There was silence on the other end of the phone, so I added, enjoy the freeloaders now. The silence dragged on for a moment before she exploded. She couldn't believe I had left without telling anyone. She went on and on about how I was abandoning the family and leaving them in financial ruin. She asked how I could be such an ungrateful and selfish son, especially after everything they've done for me. She made it clear they had been counting on my money to keep the house afloat, and now I was just leaving them when they needed me the most. But it didn't affect me. I was done. Done with the emotional manipulation, done with the guilt tripping, and done with being the scapegoat. My mom tried to pressure me in every possible way, telling me I had betrayed the family and that they didn't know how they'd manage without my contribution. But I stood my ground. I reminded her that I had been contributing more than my fair share for far too long, and it wasn't my fault that Cam had ruined his life. The following days were tough for my family, because I blocked them on every possible platform, even when they texted me from an unknown number, saying I could at least keep paying rent. Yeah, right, as if I was going to pay rent for 2 places when I could barely afford one, especially for a family that didn't really care about what I did or didn't do. Update 5. Here I am again writing because things have happened. If it had been something simple, I probably would have let it go, but everything that happened with my brother and my parents deserves an update. I don't know if there are still many people reading my story, but I think this is by far the most interesting post I've had to make. Or at least I think so, because I'm not the protagonist of this part of the story, at least not directly. My parents showed up at my doorstep at night, and to make it even more dramatic, they did so while it was raining. I don't know if these people checked the weather before visiting me to make their visit even more theatrical, or if they just got lucky. Although, I don't know if I'd call it luck, because what happened was pretty ugly. There they were, standing at my door, somewhat wet, because they needed a place to stay. Which seemed strange to me since they had a house, but I was wrong. I didn't ask any questions and simply told them they couldn't stay there. Besides everything we had been through, there was the small detail that my place was quite tiny. But that didn't bother them because they were planning to take my bedroom and have me sleep in the living room. My parents had a plan in mind that didn't fit my apartment, and even less what I wanted, which was not to live with them under any circumstances. Before closing the door, I asked them why they weren't at their own house. What they told me was the most unbelievable thing in the world. My brother had kicked them out. According to their story, my mom discovered that my sister-in-law had been stealing money from her. And honestly, I believe it, since I once caught her snooping through my room, and her excuse about looking for a pen never sounded very believable to me. So there was a confrontation, and they were given until the end of the week to leave. But instead of leaving, my brother got them tickets to a show. When they left, he changed the locks and locked them out. And the worst part is, the tickets were fake. They made the whole trip to the neighboring city to see the show, only to be humiliated at the door when someone told them the tickets were counterfeit. When they returned home, they tried to open the door with their keys and found they didn't work. They knocked on the door, but the only response they got from my brother was, "Better us than you," and he never answered them again. Even though they banged on the door for an hour, my brother didn't let them in. This happened just minutes before they showed up at my place. I asked why they hadn't called the police, and my mom said they planned to, but it was late and they wanted to rest. That's why they decided to come stay with me. I repeated that they couldn't stay there and that, in any case, they could use the money I'd been giving them to pay for a hotel for a few nights. They protested, But I told them, I have a job and have been paying rent at your house for a long time. My brother, who can't hold down a job or keep his buddy in his pants before being financially stable, gets to live there for free, and you expect more from me. It's time to demand something from him. Thanks for visiting. And then I closed the door. I know some might think I'm the bad guy for leaving my parents outside, but there's nothing I can do for them. It's true I don't want them living with me, but even if I did, there isn't room for 4 people. It's been a few days since all this happened, and whether or not my parents get their house back, I'll let you know. Update 6. A month later, my parents have gotten the house back, but not in the state they lost it. And I don't just mean that my brother and his family are no longer there, but also all the damage and destruction the house has suffered. This is what happens when you let irresponsible people who pay for nothing stay in your home. Aside from some things that were stolen, there's also the damage. There are painted walls, the upstairs bathroom was flooded, which caused more damage, and some windows are broken. The only good news, at least for my nieces and nephews, is that Child Protective Services have taken them away. Due to the obvious lack of parental care, one of the kids fell down the stairs and fractured an arm. Adding to the fact that they had taken the house by force, the situation for my brother and his wife doesn't look good. I don't know what will happen to them now, but that's how things stand for the moment. My parents have refused to press charges against my brother because, according to what they've told other people, not me, he did all this because he was going through a lot. I have no words for my parents now. I think they deserve this and maybe a bit more as well. Update 7. For those who were worried about my nieces and nephews, this update is for you. My nieces and nephews have been taken to live with my parents. Child Protective Services asked if I wanted or could take them in since I'm family, but I think you can already guess my answer. I believe my parents should have sued. At the very least, my brother had a car in his name. With that, they could have recovered some of the damages. But my parents can forgive anything my brother does, even all this, which is very different from how they treat the black sheep of the family, meaning me, whom my parents have cut off completely. It's ironic because, as I recall, it was the other way around. But that's the story my parents tell anyone who asks about me. Although honestly, I don't think many people believe them, knowing my brother was the one who caused all the destruction. And as for my brother, he's living in that same car. It's not like the chances of finding someone who'll let you stay in their home are very high when you literally trashed the last house you were allowed into.